Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, Attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Annalie Kruger. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim.
And so, Annalie, you have a company called Care Right, is that correct?
That's right.
And today we're going to do something that everybody needs to do, and we're going to talk about, do you have an aging plan? And so, a lot of my clients are like, I'm not getting old, I'm not going to a nursing home, not doing any of those kind of things. So let's kind of get going as far as, how can an aging plan, prevent caregiver burnout, let's kind of start there, see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it. So we talk about aging planning because most families or most people, it makes sense to them to think about, a financial plan and an estate plan, or long-term care insurance, an intellect of planning ahead for the what whens and the what ifs of aging. Well, an aging plan encompasses family dynamics, facilitating family meetings to talk about, what's working well, what's not working well right now. What are the goals? We know moms and dads want to age in place at home. And we also know they don't want to be a burden on their kids. But the reality is it's always the adult kids calling us at Care Right Incorporated because mom and dad are taking a lot of their time, their energy, and obviously also their finances. My typical son or daughter is spending at least $25,000 just in airfare the year before they hire us for an aging plan, because when you get that crisis call that dad fell again and daughter lives in New York and dad lives in Arizona, airfare is not $69 on Frontier, right? Okay. So these adult kids are reaching out to Care Right because they're like, look, I love mom and dad, but it is their care needs and, just the aging process. Families are blindsided by really what that looks like and how much that can cost. Not only opportunity cost for their own family relationships where the spouse might say, look, I love your parents, but now their needs are really affecting our marriage. You're not present in our marriage. You're always worried about, did dad fall again? Or did mom wander out of the house? All of those things. So when we talk about an aging plan, it's like we know that none of us get healthier, none of us get more cognizant, none of us get more mobile as we age. So let's start talking and putting a plan in place about those what whens. What's the plan when mom needs more care? Who's going to step in and do it? How is that care going to get paid? What do mom and dad have for finances? Am I the power of attorney? If so, I need all this information so that I can help make care decisions or financial decisions. What's the plan if they can't stay at home? Most people want to age in place at home, but very few people have the $30,000 a month minimum that it costs to bring in 24/7 care. And then what's that plan look like if that caregiver doesn't show up for their shift, or because of the pandemic, we just have massive shortages of quality healthcare workers. So some of these home care companies, it might take 2 or 3 home care companies to partner together to be able to staff a 24/7 client. Does that make sense? And then knowing the landscape of senior care, everybody does want to age in place at home, but nursing homes are full, right? They all pretty much have 100% occupancy all of the time. And why is that? Because those people also wanted to stay at home. It's just not always feasible or affordable or viable or safe. So families, when we work with them on this aging plan process, we do what's also called a care matrix, which is a done for you, so that your family doesn't have to just Google and hope for the best and finding home care or touring care facilities, spending a whole day touring care facilities or care communities, and then find out, oh, mom doesn't have enough money to financially qualify to get into this care community, or mom needs memory care and dad needs assisted living. We didn't know that those are 2 different kinds of care. And so now we've got mom in one facility and dad in another facility. So when we do an aging plan, we solve for those problems by putting an actual strategy and systems in place and a plan in place, that if mom and dad want to stay at home and it's feasible, then there's all sorts of different solutions that can be put into play if they can afford it. But what's the plan when you realize that you just can't shell out 30 grand or 60 grand if you've got two aging parents that need 24/7 care? That's how it gets so expensive so quickly. And knowing that, you know, these care communities, you have to financially qualify to get in. You have to cognitively qualify, behaviorally qualify, and they have to have an opening. And so what happens when people don't have an aging plan, their loved one ends up in whichever facility has an open bed. And I can promise you that's not going to be the best solution for them. The aging plan is also, it's very robust. So that's why it takes more than a second to like answer that question when I get asked, what is an aging plan? The other aspect of an aging plan is our digital grab and go, which is a massive, basically checklist. There's 12 headings, like who are the people that you work with? Who's your attorney? Who's your financial advisor? Who's your CPA? Because all of those professionals, it's rare that adult kids nowadays know who their parents see as physicians. It's rare that kids know if they're the power of attorney or accounts and passwords, VA discharge records. There's a pet section in there in case you have a pet and something happens to you. Where do you board it? What's its medications? Who's the vet? There's also a special needs section in there because we do a lot of special needs planning as well for the vulnerable adult who might need to be having their own aging plan. And there's also a business succession plan tab in there. So all things that are related to a person's business, because this digital grab and go is for literally anyone over the age of 18. It's just not for, you know, someone who's 70. It's all of us have to have all of those documents in order and make sure that we have everything buttoned up. So an aging plan is very comprehensive, and it really is a lot of education for families. And this is why, because most families come to us, they say Medicare and Medicaid interchangeably as if they're the same program. They'll say assisted living and nursing home in the same sentence as if those are the same types of care, and they are not at all. They are not at all the same kind of care. And then there's also all these kind of family dynamics where, well, I thought that my siblings would help me take care of mom, and they haven't stepped in or they haven't offered to help at all. And I feel like I'm an only child, even though I'm not. And then you've got the blended family dynamics as well. So the aging plan really starts out as, you know, family meetings to say, okay, what's going on, get our discovery. Then we can educate the families so then they can make smart, informed decisions about current and future care needs and make sure they have all their documents in order.
So what do you think the common mistakes that families make are?
Oh boy. Okay. So this is a short little podcast. So common mistakes, common mistakes are families not having any conversations about the what whens.
Yeah.
The reality is, though, even if they did try, when they don't know what they're doing, you can't expect people to make informed decisions, right? So you can't expect someone to make smart decisions if they think Medicare and Medicaid are the same program or that Medicare is going to pay for everything. So really, if you're not going to hire a professional to help guide you, if you're going to be a do-it-yourselfer, then you really need to become an expert and almost a PhD in funding care, the landscape of senior care, dementia, and family dynamics. So mistakes are not having documents in order, like their digital grab and go binder, not having family meetings to discuss the what whens of aging, families not, or parents not having a senior safe house, and then realizing, oh, dad just had a stroke and he doesn't have a senior safe house. He doesn't have walk-in showers or anything like that. So if the plan is really to age in place at home and you're going to invest all you've got in that, then you're going to want to make sure that that house is at least safe for them with walk-in showers and, everything on one level, those kind of things. Other mistakes families make, not giving kids the copies of the power of attorney if you even have them. And again, so not sharing the grab and go binder information like long-term care insurance. When I meet with families, 9 times out of 10, they have no idea what their parents have in order. Financially, they have no clue where their parents are financially. They don't know the financial planner their parent works with. They don't know if their parents have long-term care insurance. They don't know anything. And so that makes it very scary when they're in crisis mode because dad had a stroke and he lost capacity, and they have no idea. So now the kids are spending hours and hours and hours, and they usually have to fly to wherever their parents might have a in case I die folder or in case something happens to me folder somewhere in the house. Now the kids have to leave work again, fly to wherever their parent lives to try to find all this paperwork. And you have to have this stuff at your fingertips. So being very ill prepared is another mistake. And another big mistake is not understanding the disease that your loved one has. Almost all of our clients have dementia. And even with the Alzheimer's Association and all these other resources that have been out there for years, still to this day, families will say, well, if dad's dementia gets worse, or if dad starts to wander, or if dad can't take his medications or remember to take his medications anymore. So that tells me that they haven't, been educated about what their loved one has for a disease process. Or like Parkinson's disease. I've had clients that their mom had Parkinson's for 15 years and the kids are like, well, if it gets worse, or we didn't know that it was a dementing illness, so that tells me that, they've fallen through the cracks of our healthcare system. So that's why with our services as a family caregiver consultant who works with families all across the world as a virtual family caregiver consultant, a lot of what we do, how we spend a lot of our time is really educating families so they can make informed decisions, so they can know that, yes, dementia can be a 30-year disease process because physically they're pretty healthy. So how are you going to fund long-term care, and where are they going to live to get the type of care that they're going to need?
And so that always surprises me sometimes. I think a lot of families are in denial. Because they don't want to know, what's coming. And so I think that can be huge as well. So, you talked about a lot of your family members, have dementia. What are a few things that they should know about dementia?
Well, that it's progressive, so it's not going to get better, that their loved one eventually will need 24/7 care for their own safety and for their well-being. We also know that whomever the primary caregiver is, perhaps it's the spouse, we know that caregiver is going to end up getting burned out and getting overwhelmed, and they'll neglect their own needs, like not getting their hip surgery done because, well, how am I supposed to get my hip done? Who's going to watch your father because he's up all night and he's got his days and nights mixed up. So those are all things that families need to understand. They also, like I said earlier, need to understand, depending on what type of dementia, there are many different types of dementia, but it's a very long disease and it's a very expensive disease. And unfortunately, one of the mistakes families make, in addition to being in denial, is just ignoring the red flags that things are not going well for their parents, meaning ignoring mom's lost weight, or she looks exhausted, or mom has been missing her own doctor's appointments because she can't leave dad home alone, or she tried to go to her own doctor's appointment. She brought her, husband who has dementia with her, but he was wandering all over the clinic. And so she couldn't, so ignoring those red flags that things are not going well. We also know that adult kids, because it's not, 30 years ago when I first started working with families had a little bit more inkling of what's going on because they lived down the street from each other. And back in the day, we'd have, family get-togethers on the weekends and, picnics and all that kind of stuff. But as families started moving away from each other, it's really easy for families, for adult kids to really assume that their parents are doing much better than they really are. And so then when they do visit once a year or however often, they're usually blindsided because they're like, oh my gosh, mom's lost 30 pounds, or dad's way more confused and he didn't recognize us, or we walked into their house and it smelled like a nursing home. Ignoring those red flags and not having that be an automatic kind of common sense thing of, oh my gosh, things aren't going well. We need to put a plan in place because it's just a matter of time before things go even worse. It's a house of cards when you don't have a plan in place.
So I know why planning is critical. So tell our listeners why you think so.
Well, because families come, so despite my best efforts at trying to reach families proactively, 92% of our families come to us in total crisis mode. They're overwhelmed, they're burned out, their relationships all across the board are really dicey with their spouse at home, with their kids at home, with the care recipient, and with the siblings, if there's siblings. So we also know that caregiving has derailed the family caregivers' finances, careers. Almost every day I'm meeting with families who, just yesterday, another son is contributing $2,000 a month to his mom so that she can afford to stay in assisted living. So there's a financial cost, a financial toll on the adult kids as well, because they're often funding in some way or missing work because they have to now shell out $1,200 for an emergency airfare. So those are issues. And so an aging plan solves for, family meetings. We facilitate the family meetings. With an aging plan, they are making smart, informed decisions because they're making decisions off of correct information instead of what neighbor Joe did with his mom, right? Who has a totally different scenario than what your scenario is. We also know that with an aging plan, then caregiving won't derail their careers, their finances, their emotional health, and their physical health. And their parents will have the best quality of life and the best quality of care possible. When I ask my client, because my client's the whole family, when I ask my Ethels and Marvins, the parents, what are your goals as you age? It has always been the same two responses for the 30 years that I've been working with families. It is, I want to age in place at home, and I don't want to be a burden on my kids. But who do you think is always the one reaching out to us? Again, the adult kids. When I ask the adult kids, what are your goals for your parents? It's always a variation of the same thing. I want my parent, it's always the same thing. I want my parents to be safe. That's always the first one. I want my parents to be safe and happy and have the best quality of life and the best quality of care possible. Well, if those are the goals, then it's just common sense that if you want to have the best outcomes, no matter what happens in life, you have to put a plan in place instead of being willy-nilly when you're the most dependent and vulnerable and at the mercy of other people to help take care of you. So if your listener is the Ethel and the Marvins, if you want to have a say in what happens to you as you age, we need to be putting a plan in place. You can include your kids or not include your kids, but a plan needs to be in place. If you're the adult kids listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? Anna Lee is just like saying everything that is happening. Mom's getting more confused. She's lost weight, or dad had a major stroke last Thursday and now the hospital's like, okay, we need all these decisions made, or he's going to skilled rehab. What's that mean? And so it's really helping these families all across the country understand aging, caregiving, dementia progression, care options, and paying for care so that they can then work with their financial planner and say, look, this is how much care is going to cost, because advisors don't always know either, because this is all kind of new information for financial planners too. And that's just how it is. And so this way, with working with us, then the financial planner can also then kind of stress test the financial plan that they have in place so that you don't get into this situation and realize, oh, there's just no money to pay for care. And what's that going to look like? Well, then you go on Medicaid, and then you have zero options of who your care providers will be.
That is correct. And so
zero options. I just want to underline that again, because sometimes families' response is, well, what difference does it make? We'll just put her on Medicaid. And so I'm like, okay, that shouldn't be your first go-to plan.
So, Annalie, if somebody wants to get in touch with you because their family is in crisis or they want to pre-plan, how do they do that?
Yes. So you can call the number you can call us at 239-676-3170. You can also reach out on the Care Right Inc. website, and that's CARERIGHT inc.com, and you can actually just schedule your consult. I offer a free 30-minute consult for families, and then just learn what their situation is. It's always a variation of the same thing. There's some sort of crisis that's happened and has made someone in the family more aware that, oh, we're uncomfortable. What we're doing isn't sustainable. And I'd also like to say that the first 5 people who call for a consult, I'm not holding this right, can get a complimentary copy of my book called The Invisible Patient: The Emotional, Financial, and Physical Toll on Family Caregivers. The reason why there is a lonely bench on the front cover is because nearly every single family caregiver shares how lonely and isolating this journey is. And it really is, because caregiving can consume your emotional well-being, your physical safety, and certainly your career and your finances. So we want to prevent all of those things from happening by putting a plan in place, or a crisis plan. If you're already in crisis mode, that's okay. 92% of our families come to us in total crisis. 85% of our families require our family mediation services because the family's not on the same page.
Yeah, and we see that a lot too. And where family members can't agree on the care, or where the care, or who's going to do the care, and things like that. So definitely. Well, Emily, this has been a great wealth of information today. And I know you've got a lot more to tell our listeners. So we look forward to having you on again on the show soon.
I just have one more thing, because I know we talked about families, right? And siblings, but there's also a lot of single kids out there, like they're an only child. So this message is also for you. At some point, something's going to happen with your parents. And if you're stressed and overwhelmed now with work and your own family and stuff, it's only going to be 1,000 times worse because everything is on your shoulders. So everyone has a vested interest in working with putting an aging plan in place, because otherwise you're going to get these crisis calls and you're not going to have any idea what to do or where to go for help. And, the crises are going to happen. So let's just know that going into it, and put a plan in place for everyone's safety and well-being.
Perfect. That's great information. And thanks so much, Annalie. We'll see you soon.
Very good. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcasts as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.